It's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater, and welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. I have an incredible woman joining me here today, a woman that I had the pleasure just recently to be able to sitting down and have coffee with and really get to know the work that she's doing. Nancy Rizzuto is an accomplished entrepreneur with over 25 years of leadership experience. She is the founding partner and principal of CapStrat, formerly Capital Strategies Investment Group, an independent fiduciary advisory firm. She is also the founder of CapStrat Women's Forum, a community launched in May of 2015 with a mission to support the personal, professional, and financial success of women. Today, the Women's Forum reaches over, get this, 5,000 women. I am thrilled that Nancy is joining me here today, that we could be talking about this.
Hi, Ivy. Thanks so much for having me.
With pleasure. We always have a lovely time when we talk and catch up, and now they actually get listeners to actually hear what we have to say.
Yeah.
So let's go back and say, how did you get involved in the financial world first? Let's get the background here.
Yeah, sure. So great question. So it's interesting. I got involved really kind of by default. I had been a principal at a national benefit and compensation consulting firm that was actually headquartered in Seattle, but I led the New York City office. And eventually that company was sold to a global broker dealer. And because I was a principal of the benefit and compensation consulting firm, when we were acquired by the broker dealer, I was required to kind of stay on for a certain number of years. And so that's how I really got into financial services. And then after our retention agreements expired at the broker dealer, it was a great experience being there for those few years because it taught us and gave us the perspective and the visibility to a different side or different type of business model than what I came from. And but it just didn't fit with our values and my principles and the principles and values of my colleagues. So after our retention agreements expired, we just decided to step out and start our own firm based on, the business model that really spoke to us. And so we started our company in 2003, really built on two principles, trust and transparency. And here we are 18 years later, and it has just been such a thrill of my life to be part of CapStrat and to be one of the founding partners.
So 18 years later, let's call a spade a spade. 18 years ago, there was not a lot of women leaders kicking off financial companies.
Yeah. There weren't at all. And it's interesting, two of myself, there were three of us who founded the firm and two of us are women. And up until just last year or the year before, half of our owners were women. And, to your point, that was really unusual for a financial services firm to have, so many leaders as women in the company. But it really just, I think, gave us an interesting kind of insight into, especially as we started the Women's Forum, into how to support women from a more holistic perspective. But yeah, it was very unusual to have a really women leaders in a financial services firm, especially when we launched, 18 years ago.
Were there challenges that were unique at that time because a strong portion of the leadership team were women, or because you had a background that you were able to navigate through that?
Yeah, I think that we had a background that we were able to navigate around it. 18 years ago, perhaps there were a couple instances that I could think of where we weren't taken, seriously. But our credibility and our confidence and our business model and everything we believed in really allowed us to rise above that. So it wasn't It wasn't an obstacle for us. It was really, I think, more of an advantage eventually.
And I love that. I love using our assets as advantages and actually
Exactly.
seeing our assets as women as advantages in business versus disadvantages.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So I know you've put so much energy, heart, work into the Women's Forum, Women's Leadership Forum. So what was the catalyst to start that?
Yeah, so we started it because, a couple things. For me personally, it was really important because when I was at that global broker dealer, I asked two senior women to mentor me, and I was told no. And so that was the early 90s, and it wasn't no, now's not the right time, or I don't have the bandwidth, come back to me in 6 months, or I'm not the right person, but let me introduce you to somebody else. It was really a flat out no. And I just, at that point, perhaps it didn't really resonate, or I didn't think about it and I just went on kind of. But today I think about it and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's just, it's so unacceptable. But back then it was all about competition and not collaboration with women. There was only, you had to sit at the table and put your arms out, and there was only one seat at the table, and there was only room for one woman. And I think that has to stop.
And I'm going to chime in for a second because going back in the day and being an early women leader,
right,
there were only one seat at the table for women, and the women were put in a very, very difficult position you couldn't mentor other women up because then you were out.
Exactly.
There was only that one seat, I'm not making, just looking at both sides of the coin from that woman's perspective, because I would also look for women leaders to who can I go to? Who can I model after? Who can be that person?
Right.
And I found more acceptance by men who wanted to help me along than women at that time.
I would agree. And, it's interesting because the two men who have mentored me and invested in me, the two people, were both men. And again, I attribute it to, that was the period of time in business that we were in. But so that was one reason why we started the Women's Forum, or one of the reasons that was really important to me. The other reason we started the Women's Forum is because back in 2014, 2015, we were noticing that there weren't really any collaborative communities that created safe spaces for women to really come and have meaningful conversations about their careers, about their vision for the future, about their community service, about their leadership. It was more about, you go to these events, you hand out a couple business cards, and that was it. But it really wasn't anything, as I said, deliberate, intentional, or authentic. And we wanted to change that. And because we thought about creating this community where women could come together and not hand out a bunch of business cards, but have maybe 2 or 3 meaningful conversations with women who were both like-minded and different-minded, and explore opportunities to really support one another. And we started the Women's Forum in Chicago in May of 2015. And we had a speaker from the University of Chicago who's still a dear friend of the Women's Forum. She came in and hosted, I think it was about a 45-hour lunch workshop type of thing. We had 28 people attend. And today we reached, to your point, over 5,000. But what was just remarkable was the commitment to women to really support one another, both inside and outside of the office, and also from a holistic perspective, that they wanted to help one another professionally, but also personally, because women share experiences, both that are common, that are different. Whether you have children, didn't have children, whether you aspire to be the CEO or just we're pivoting and becoming a board member, whatever it was, there was always just a more, authentic and intentional aspect of creating a community that was not just about handing out business cards, but truly wanting to help one another succeed. And as you know, women define success so differently. But the women in our women's forum really come together to explore, what does success look like to you and how can I support your success? Go ahead.
One of the things that's coming to mind as I'm listening to you is the idea of a connection versus a relationship.
Yeah.
We pass the business cards out, we make the initial connection. Now, what happens with that is always that big question mark. It gets put in the bottom of your bag, your briefcase, your clutch, your sack, it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
Versus truly developing a relationship that creates long-term support, caring, brainstorming. People, somebody recently actually interviewed me, and I said, the differentiator is really getting to know somebody, getting to know about their personal life, their business world, what their goals are,
right,
what their challenges are, and how you support it. And that's developing a true relationship. And just like we hopped onto this interview when we started talking, a few minutes of personal before we hit record, because that's where you take that to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think about it, coming from the financial services industry, one of the things we talk about in our firm is that we cultivate relationships, we cultivate partnerships. Whereas when we were at the broker dealer side, it was more transactional. And when we bring women together in the women's forum community, we always encourage women to think about the quality and not the quantity of people that you're meeting. If it's a hell yes in terms of exploring what a relationship with a woman looks like and how you can support one another's success, amen. But if it's not, that's okay too. And you can step back. But maybe down the road, there's a way that you will think about, oh, I remember meeting Ivy and she had this need and I can introduce her to this person. So it's really that kind of organic type of conversation and type of community. And this is the women's forum really has become my religion. And, being able to support women, as I said, in or out of the office, whatever their request is or whatever their need is, if we can't or I can't fulfill it, I will do my best to find somebody who can.
Nancy, what do you see as some of the challenges? Well, in the women's forums you're doing and in this community that has been formed, what do you see some of the challenges of the women today?
I think one of the biggest, two of the biggest challenges, Ivy, is overcoming fear and getting women to take action, to really invest in themselves. Women by nature are outwardly focused on caring for everybody else and caring for themselves last. And, and not saying, oh, I'll get to that, I'll get to it. Well, that's never going to happen. You just continue to kind of push it down the road or kick the can down the road, whatever the saying is. But I think getting women, one of the biggest challenges is really getting women to take action and invest in themselves. We do this program in the Women's Forum called Money, Power, and Purpose. And it's really about getting women to take action today so that they can achieve financial freedom in the future. And it's a great program. And, we go through a whole host of things. We focus on, the power of money. We believe that money is power and women need more of both. And when I talk about power, it's about, it gives you the freedom to make the choices in your own life. We talk a lot about the money mindset, and then we talk about, here are 7 or 8 actions you can take today, but I can lead a horse to water. I cannot make them drink. And so we follow up all the time in our women's forum to help hold women accountable, but they have to deeply want to have that freedom, to have those choices in their lives. So action is the first thing. And then I think the other thing is just the fear, is feeling that, getting over the fear that they are not worthy, getting over the fear that that they can't take that first step. And when we talk about action, I'm not talking about actions in grand scales. I'm talking about, go home and have a conversation with your husband about your finances. Go home and have a conversation with your husband and ask him, how is your money invested? Women are great at budgeting, at saving, at paying the bills, but we lack confidence when it comes to our long-term, financial goals and investment strategies. And all we encourage women to do is take that seat at the table. So go home and make a date night once a month to talk about some aspect of your financial life. It's really, and the more you push through that fear and the more you take action and build that momentum, it is the number one confidence builder for women.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly on so many things you're saying. I'll pop in a couple of very thoughts that have come into me. Is first of all, women take care of ourselves last, whether we're parents or not parents. We have this nurturing gene, okay, that tends to, we'll take care of the people in our office. We will take care of our community. We'll take care of the organizations we're involved in. And we just keep, saying, I'll get to myself later. Recently on our roundtable I was hosting, we did a little exercise of everybody taking out the calendar and scheduling time for the next 30 days that put themselves first.
That's great.
Whether that meant, exercise, a facial, a massage, a girls' night out, it didn't matter what it looked like, right? But we actually did that exercise right then and there, because if we don't put ourselves in our own calendars, our calendars get filled.
Exactly.
In that same being, I agree with you. Women are financially astute, brilliant, capable. And we just, because we're so busy taking care of so many other things, we leave the financial planning, the future of our finances, to our partners, our spouses.
Right. We give away our power.
And that gives away our power.
Right. Exactly.
And, it can start with us saying, looking, being curious. It's non-judgmental. It's coming from a place of curiosity. And it's also actually a beautiful way, when I'm listening to you, Nancy, is keeping the two spouses on that same page, that you're working in the same direction. You still have those same goals for your financial future. You have the same goals of the life you want to live, whether it be in your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, your 70s. Because I will tell you, 20 years ago, what I saw myself in my 60s and 70s is very different than what I see for myself today.
Right.
And if you don't open and continue to have those conversations, that's where you end up with a misalignment.
Yeah.
With your partners and your finances.
And it's interesting, Ivy, because I believe that, talking about money is so important. And a lot of us carry narratives from our family money stories, that our parents didn't talk about it, that money is taboo and all that kind of stuff. When, talking about money is really smart. And I believe that, for people who, for example, are, getting married, that the money conversation comes in the same conversation of, do you want children? Because if you can't talk about money before you get married, and then and we totally get, in every marriage, you got to divide and conquer. And we all know that women tend to, take care of everybody and the children and stuff like that. But that is the point where we give away our power. And then not being able to talk about it, it creates stress and uncertainty in your relationship, and it just grows. And if you think about it, one of the reasons we encourage women to stay involved is because, and we profess this in the Women's Forum, is because 9 out of 10 of us are going to be solely responsible for our finances at some point in our lives. We're living longer than men. We're we're getting married later. We're widows and so on. And if you're, for example, not involved in your estate planning while you're married, and you become really responsible for the disposition of assets, and you have no idea what that estate plan says until after your spouse, something happens, or your spouse or partner passes away, that's not the right place to start learning about what decisions were made. So that's why we want women to come together, to be able to talk about these things together, and why we encourage women to stay involved in, their financial lives at the start of their careers, at the start of their marriages, and then continue on.
So what is 1 or 2 tips that a smart, savvy woman leader, now that we're in 2022, right, that we can start we can start doing. Like, here's, to me, one of the things I love about business is to bring things down to the simple, practical steps. Mm-hmm. So what are one or two things smart, savvy women who are listening today can take action around?
So there are two things. One, have a financial plan, because it is a path to help you achieve your financial goals. And just realize that a financial plan, and not just your investments, but a financial plan should really outline what is it you are working so hard to achieve, and how are we going to get you there? And what are, some of the triggers, some of the compromises and so on that might be modeled. So if you want to spend a little bit more now, or you have the financial resources to spend a little bit more on yourself now and still be okay in the future, that's great. Or do you need to start saving more in order to have that financial freedom in the future? So I cannot, just stress how important having a financial plan is. But again, it should be a holistic plan, not just here's how we're going to invest your money. The second, and realize that a financial plan is a living document. It's not something you write once or create once with your advisor or your broker. It is a living document and evolves as your life evolves. So stuff is going to happen. Life events happen. So that financial plan will change. The second is invest. Women, again, are really good at saving and paying the bills, but we don't invest because we think that there's too much risk in investing. And we would offer that there's risk in not investing. We're great savers. We are so great at saving, but we don't want to invest. And I always say that you don't have to be an expert to invest. You just have to be engaged and be aware of your mindset. If you are, contributing, participating in a 401k, if you've got an after-tax brokerage account, if you have a 529 for your sons and daughters or children, if you have an HSA, you are an investor. So a lot of it has to also do with our mindset. But investing is so important because it is not necessarily about the amount. It is about the discipline and the consistent behavior. So those are two things.
Talk about the discipline and the consistent behavior.
Yeah, so it's just, it gets back, Ivy, to that action. If we put in a process where we're dollar cost averaging, or we're just, investing on a consistent basis, whether that's in our 401k, in our after tax, in our emergency funds, in our, rainy day funds, whatever it is about the action. The number one driver of women's confidence is saving and investing. And the more we see that those, accounts grow, the more we see that consistent action. And a lot of times you can just automate all of this. So it's not like you have to do anything. You make it come from your paycheck into all these accounts. It is just, I was recently asked, what inspires you the most? What just inspires you? And one of the things that really inspires me is when I see women take action in investing in themselves and see their confidence just soar. And it's those things, it is about taking action. It is about aligning your beliefs and your words with the action of doing it.
I love that. Aligning your beliefs and your words with the action of doing.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly.
Nancy, how can our viewers and listeners learn more about you and about the Women's Forum?
Oh, thanks for asking. Sure. So you can reach out to me at my email address, which is nrizzuto@capstratig.com. Or really the easiest way is just to go onto my LinkedIn profile and then check in on our Women's Forum at capstratwomensforum.com. But I would be, delighted to offer any support that I can to your listeners, and really so grateful for this opportunity to speak to you this morning.
Wonderful listeners, you know how I close this show every week, and this is one of the most important things you can do today. Take a moment and think about, what did you take away? What was your ahas by listening to Nancy and I's conversation and all the value that Nancy brought today? And then what action are you going to take from this? This is what Nancy and I were talking about. I'm all about the action from. We listen to a lot of things. There's a lot of great content out there. Hopefully her success story is an avid part of your days. Now, break down the actions you're going to take, and feel free to put that into our notes below. You can find out more about Nancy through LinkedIn, as well as reaching out to her directly. She is fabulous. Remember to hit subscribe, and we come into your inbox, into your podcast app every Monday morning, bright and early, with fabulous guests, as we had Nancy today, and some wonderful content. To a fabulous 2022, listeners, let's kick this off right.